When I was 19 in my second year of university, I lived in a small city, or rather a place just big enough to be called one. It wasn't bustling or dangerous, it's just quiet and familiar. During that time in my life, I often went on walks alone at night to clear my mind. I know that's not the safest thing to do, especially as a young woman, but it felt harmless back then. Plus, as I mentioned, it was a small city after all. One night while I was on one of those walks, a man approached me. At first, it seemed like he was just trying his luck asking for my phone number and trying to flirt. But very quickly, the interaction turned dark after I refused his offer. His tone shifted and he started asking me invasive questions like, "Where do you live? What time do you usually go on walks? How easy would it be for me to follow you?" Then, if that wasn't creepy enough, he then said, "I could just follow you." At this point, panic surged through my body. I told him firmly to leave me alone, and that's when things escalated. He reached for my phone, grabbed both my wrists, and said, "You're coming with me." He then began pulling me away. You have no idea how terrified I was. To add a little more detail, he was well over 6 feet tall and solidly built, far stronger than I was. I, on the other hand, was a malnourished 19-year-old university student who could barely afford a decent meal, let alone defend herself against someone like him. But by some miracle, there was a pub nearby, and the people outside noticed what was happening and rushed toward us. The man let go of me, ran a ways, and disappeared into the night. At that point, I also ran, but I didn't take my usual route home. Instead, I doubled back and took the long way to make sure I wasn't being followed. Fortunately, I made it home without any other incident. I thought that was it, but it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. A black car began appearing outside our house late at night, and it was always around midnight. The driver stayed inside mostly hidden, but sometimes he would get out and linger around our front garden. He was just standing there, watching in silence. We didn't call the police, and looking back at it now was the first mistake. A huge one. But at the time, we didn't want to overreact. We kept telling ourselves it was probably nothing. Then one night, while none of us were home, our neighbors had to call the police. It turns out a man had been caught trying to get into our house. He was testing the window latches and trying both the front and back doors. Most disturbingly, he was seen attempting to access my bedroom window, which is on the ground floor. It's now obvious that I was targeted, and it was personal. A few nights later, my housemates and I were sitting in the kitchen drinking cheap booze, as uni students often do, trying to shake the tension. We were laughing and relaxing for the first time in a while. Then all of a sudden, we heard a noise. Turns out he came and jumped the back wall. Keep in mind that this wasn't a fence. It was a tall brick wall. But regardless, there he was, standing in our garden, staring at us through the kitchen window. I now can fully confirm that this was the same man from that night on the street. He didn't flinch, and he was not even trying to hide. He looked at us like we were prey, and there was no fear in his eyes. Just something twisted, something that made my blood run cold. We called the police, and thankfully, this time they arrived in less than 3 minutes. To make it worse, he tried to run from the cops, but they caught him. And then we learned the most terrifying detail of all. Turns out he had a knife. What on earth were his intentions? What would have happened if I'd been home alone that night? Or if our neighbors hadn't called the police earlier? I try not to think about it too much, but sometimes it creeps into my mind at night uninvited. That man could have taken everything from me, but instead I got away. Even up to this day, the fear he left behind still lingers.